If I'm being honest, I thought about returning this lens like 4 different times, but I'm glad I didn't. What's up? My name's Chris Tejas. I'm a photographer and videographer. I'm based in Ontario, Canada. I mainly shoot events, portraits, weddings, commercial stuff. If there's a person in the frame, I'm gonna photograph it. That's kind of my thing. And 50 millimeters is my favorite focal length. It has been my favorite focal length since I started shooting 20 years ago with a film camera, and it has remained that way throughout. Whether that's because, like people say, the human eye sees at 50 millimeters, I don't know. All I can say is that I seem to see my compositions in 50 millimeter. I would say the only other focal length that I can kind of see things in is 28 millimeters. And so when I was looking at picking up a 50 millimeter for the Nikon system, you would think right away, okay, you're probably gonna wanna go with the best of the best, the 50mm 1.2. And that's true, I would have loved to go with that, but if you've looked at the price point of that, you would probably understand why I didn't. And then you're kind of stuck wondering, okay, should I go with the 50mm f1.8s or should I go with the 50mm f1.4 non-S? And that's where I bounced back and forth a lot. I picked up the 50mm 1.4, but I wasn't sure if it was the right choice. Even though I was loving some of the images I was getting out of it, I just kept wondering about that 1.8S and if that was truly going to be what I would like. And so over and over I thought about getting rid of this lens, but like I said, I'm glad I didn't, because as time has gone on and as I've been using this more, I have realized that there is something really lovely about this lens, and here's why I think this was the right choice for me and might be the right choice for you. I'm gonna put this down and we're gonna go over the sort of objective things first. Let's start with this. Objectively speaking, this is a great build quality lens. It has very nice quality images that you can get out of it. The autofocus is fast, it's reliable, it's solid and consistent. The form factor, the weight, everything about this lens is good. For a 50mm f1.4, all of that is great. However, typically, what you see is that a 50mm f1.8 is sort of like the budget intro lens, and the 1.4 is your higher end lens. And Nikon's kind of switched that a little bit. But what the 1.4 version does for you is it offers you not only a slightly cheaper lens, it gives you a faster lens, so it opens up a little bit wider and you can get some better low light performance and a little bit more subject separation. But it also gives a little more character, and that's what a lot of people talk about with this lens, is the character of it. And is that true? This is what I struggled with. And when I was thinking about making this review, I was like, what kind of a review do I want to make about this lens? And it came down to me wanting to talk about the fact that despite knowing that there was a better quality lens that I could get for basically the same amount of money, I chose to stick with this lens. And at first I thought it was for that 1.4 aperture, because having that slightly greater subject separation and low light performance in a scenario like I shoot with events or weddings can actually be helpful. You know, it's not like it's night and day, but it is, you know, helpful to be able to have that extra light. Having said that, the noise performance on the cameras I'm using is quite good, so it's not like I can use that as my justification. So next I had to think about the price point, and the price point just isn't big enough difference for me to use that as a justification either. Really, for me, it came down to this, and this is not something I've heard many people talk about, and so it tells me that this is probably very unique to my experience, but it might help you decide as well. The image quality that you get out of this is unique. It is, I don't know, the bokeh, the out of focus areas, they do have a certain quality to them that feels a little bit more like old school glass. And that is very cool. And I do actually really like that. And I know that ultimately, long term, I am probably going to buy the 50mm f1.2. I actually think the 1.4 makes a lot of sense to have in your kit as well. And the reason behind that is because the 50mm f1.8s and the 1.2s are very similar in terms of their quality. The 1.2 has greater subject separation for sure, but beyond that, I would say like the sharpness and the quality of those is quite similar. And so you're going to get a very similar shooting experience out of them. And so knowing that long-term I want to pick up the 50mm f1.2, it kind of made more sense for me to pick up that 50mm 1.4. I can get that character, that unique quality that I'm not going to get out of either of those other two lenses in this focal length. And it's allowing me to kind of try out the 50mm from Nikon to make sure that I am 100% sure that that's where I want to go. So this is a great lens. Don't get me wrong. I think this will be more than enough for most people. And for me, it would be the only 50mm I would choose if 50mm wasn't my most used and my favorite focal length. I kind of think everybody has a focal length that they love the most. And to me, if that's the case for you, you should probably consider investing in the highest quality version of that focal length that you can afford. However, when it comes to the Nikon 50mm f1.2s, you're not just looking at a high price, you're looking at a very heavy lens, and you have to be ready to lug that lens around all day long. And so that's where something like the 50mm 1.4 is really nice. So let's talk about use case and a scenario. Let's paint a picture here. Let's say I'm shooting a wedding. And I know for sure that when I'm doing the couples portraits, I want to be using the 50mm f1.2. From there, I'm using that for an hour and then maybe another hour for the ceremony or something like that. I've been using that lens for a few hours, and it gets to be cocktail hour. And I want to go around taking candids. And I love the 50mm focal length for candids as well. I find that it works really well. However, candids with a 50mm f1.2 is a little bit daunting. I think a lot of people, when they see that huge lens in their face, that's a bit overwhelming. And during cocktail hour, when you kind of want to just be a fly on the wall and capture candids, having a smaller lens and a lighter lens that's more comfortable for you is a really nice thing to have. You can swap out to that 50mm f1.4 and lighten things up a little bit. Do you want to carry two of the same focal lengths with you? Maybe, maybe not, that's up to you. But for something like a wedding where you can store your gear somewhere and you can pick it up as you need it, I think that that's a really great use case. And that's actually what I plan to be doing long term when I pick up that 50mm f1.2. I don't want to make this review all about another camera lens though, so let's just stick to the facts. We know that the 50mm f1.4 is decently sharp wide open, but it does sharpen up a lot when you get down to f2. So we know that we can get a nice sharp image out of it if we need that. Yes, there's some chromatic aberration wide open. Yes, there is some loca, and that's hard to correct for, but I don't find it to be something that is too distracting, and overall, I think the image quality and character you get out of this lens is great. Is this a great lens for you? If the scenario that I painted makes sense for you, then that's great. If you're somebody that doesn't use the 50mm as their go-to focal length, then this is probably the number one pick for you, because you're gonna get all the benefits of an f1.4 without that high price tag. And if you're not after like 100% clinical sharpness, then yeah, just go with this lens, it's great. I do have three little gripes that I wanna end with here. And the first one being that it is a 62mm filter thread. I don't own any other lenses with a filter thread of this size, which means if I wanna use any of my like filters or anything like that, I have to grab a step-up ring, which I did. It cost 10 bucks, not a big deal, but hey, could have been 67mm like so many other ones, and that would have been nice. And the third one being that it doesn't have an aperture ring. It does have a control ring that you can set to aperture. The problem actually lies more with the Nikon bodies though, because the way that they handle ISO, you can't just map like your back dial to be your ISO without having to press the ISO button first. So it's a little extra step, but you can use this just like an aperture ring. It's just, it'll go on forever instead of having that kind of satisfying click. And finally, I wish I had an AF/MF switch on it so I could quickly and easily switch to manual focus. It doesn't, and that's annoying. I think every lens should come with that. It's stupid when they don't, and it frustrates me. So that's it, that's all I got. 50mm f1.4 from Nikon. It's a great lens. I think it's very worth picking up for certain people. Overall, the quality is excellent, and you're gonna be happy with this lens. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you have this lens? Do you want this lens? Do you hate it? Do you love it? Do you think that I'm full of baloney? I swear a lot, and I'm trying not to swear on this channel too much, but yeah, full of baloney. All right, see you later.